human beings, in my opinion, in the professional setup and otherwise too, they all react to some basic human emotions.
Welcome to Lead From Within, the podcast for people leaders that explores the fascinating intersection of mental health, leadership, and performance. Hello, everybody. I'm Dr. Nick Taylor, and you're listening to Lead From Within. For today's episode, I'm delighted to be inviting Adi Roy, VP of Total Rewards and People, to the show. Adi and I have known each other now for many years, and Adi, I've always been very inspired by your thinking around people and the future of work, so I'm really excited about today's conversation. Adi's lived in India, Singapore, San Francisco, and Amsterdam, so it's truly global in his outlook of how work is and the future of work from a global perspective, and has led many high-growth organizations, really understanding what it means to be investing in well-being whilst also thinking about how we achieve sustainable high performance. Adi, I know you're very passionate about that topic, and I'm looking forward to digging into it in a moment. But first, let's begin right at the beginning. Welcome to the show. And if you wouldn't mind, could you tell us about you? Tell us about your childhood, your growing up, and your early life.
First up, thanks a lot, Nick, for having me on the show. It's a true privilege and honor to be here. I have been truly inspired by the work that you and your team has done. And as a very recent but very loyal customer of Unmind, I'm just very, very happy to be working with you guys, not just with the product that you have, but also as professionals just sharing information very, very regularly. So thanks a lot for all the partnership over the years.
Thank you, and you too.
So I grew up in India, and my early memories of my childhood are nothing but just joy. There was a lot of joy in my childhood. Doesn't mean a lot of wealth or a lot of high-flying vacations. I come from a very humble background. My parents were the first generation in the city. We are from a farming family, so they all grew up in the village. They moved to the city for the obvious reasons of better education for the kids and better career opportunities for the adults. And then all I remember, the many things, we moved houses quite a lot, because of financial reasons, etc. But my childhood was a lot about reading and reading a lot. My dad actually did a course, a bachelor in library science. I don't know how many of you know actually that something like that exists. And he gave me that love of reading very early in my life. So a lot of reading and a lot of hot Indian summer holidays spent in my grandparents' house in the village, eating mangoes fresh from the tree. So very, very vivid, very joyous memories of my childhood.
The idea of a hot climate right now, eating mangoes, is very far away from where we both are in Western Europe right now, in rainy, cloudy, autumnal days. And that love of reading took you to university and studying psychology, if I'm not mistaken.
That is right. The way the Indian education system is, there's a lot of, so to speak, streaming very early in your career. Right at the age of 14 or 15, kids are asked to pick a particular field of study, and then that's where they spend most of their life, if not their entire life. So 15-year-olds are asked to decide whether they want to go to engineering or medicine or liberal arts. And typically as a culture, at least in the 80s and 90s when I grew up in India, if you are not a STEM student, you are not really doing well academically. But my parents, despite the fact that, they basically spent all the money that they had or earned on educating the kids, really let us choose what we wanted to do. And over the years, I developed a very deep interest in the liberal arts and specifically in psychology. I wanted to do something related to psychology in industries. I didn't know human resources existed at that time. I wanted to do something called as organizational behavior. But I chose to do psychology in my bachelor program, and then went on to actually do a master's in human resource management from Bombay then, called Mumbai now.
And do you still draw on any of that learning, or has that education in psychology, a background in psychology, informed your thinking as a people leader now?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there is this bit of oh my God, he's a psychology, he's always like reading you and there's some sort of stigma attached to it. But if you step back, everything we do, a lot of companies have access to approximately the same resources, they have access to the same technology, give or take. And I'm sounding very cliched when I say this, but it is really the people which is the secret sauce, right? It's the people that differentiate one company from the other. One successful enterprise from something else is determined by the quality of people and what they bring. So observing, understanding how individuals act when they're individuals, when they're in a smaller group, when they're in a bigger group, just, it was a joyous experience for me. It wasn't like I'm studying and I have to pass these exams. And over the years, some of it has been acquired, some of this is internal, but just observing human behavior and using the insights from theory to practically assess and see how teams and individuals and teams can come together for better performance, for better outcomes, both for the individual and the company. That's probably been the work of my life. So I studied something that gave me joy. I converted that into a career. I'm continuing to do that now, and it's been a lot of fun, a lot of learnings over the way. And then the question you asked me about, does the learning stop? I don't think it stops. I think literally every day there's something else that I'm learning and rethinking and reimagining some of the things that I've learned or believed in before. It's a continuous process.
I love that idea that you mentioned the stigma. People think maybe you can read their minds as a result of studying psychology. I've had that quite a lot in my life. I mean, I wish I had that Jedi power. That'd be a lot of fun. But no, sadly, it doesn't translate to one meaning the other. And then how did you become? What was the mindset that took you around the world? So you went from India then to Singapore. So tell us about that part of your life.
If 20 years back, somebody had told me I would have worked at Google for 10 years, traveled the world, then I would have worked at Uber for 6 years, traveled the world, worked in multiple countries, I would have laughed. So, and I know I might sound like I'm having this classic imposter syndrome, but seriously, I grew up in a small, little one-room house, and, education was everything. So I'm first up, I'm exceptionally blessed and thankful for the opportunities that the world has given me. And of course, I've taken those opportunities and I'm making it sound like everything came, but it didn't. You have to work hard for it. But I think life is a great mixture of the right hard work and the right dedication and being there when the opportunity is knocking at your door and opening that door. A lot of people, over the years have asked me a few times what my advice to them would be for career development. And there are many things that I could say, but I've always chosen to say, if your life situation allows, there's some people whose life situation might not allow them to, right? And then that's fine. But if your life situation allows, or even if it is not easy, but if you can push it and make it happen, pack your bags and move. Mm-hmm. Just move. Even if you fail, you learn so much. And now I know this out of experience. Early on in my life, it was a hunch. And I'm so happy that a hunch has come true. So, one is just the entire, the stress of moving, etc. All the obvious things. But there's so many things that are not obvious. Just the understanding of cultures and people around the world. And I'm going to say something which will sound very contradictory. People are, cultures are very different. Europe and Asia and Tokyo and Singapore and India, very, very different. And I agree with you. And I agree with everybody who says that. But also, at the core, people are the same everywhere in the world.
Yeah.
Right? And I think if you over-index on, everybody's the same, then you'll make mistakes. But if you over-index on, I need to totally understand all the nuances of a culture, you might be, getting into analysis paralysis. I think there's a sweet spot. Human beings, in my opinion, in the professional setup, and otherwise too, they all react to some basic human emotions, Give them good work to do. Tell them when they've done a good job. and don't yell at them in public. Praise in public. Um, Compensate and pay well for a task well done over a period of time with whatever budgets your company allows. So all these are consistent around the world. You might do it over a Guinness in Ireland and over sake in Tokyo and masala chai in India. The context might change a bit, but the human language, I think at its core is the same. So I'm now having lived and worked in many parts of Asia, in the US, and now in Amsterdam. I'm even more convinced that it's a joyous world out there. You just have to get up, go, and explore. Is it going to be bumpy? For sure. But it's worth the experience.
I really love that as a reflection, actually, that yes, there's a huge amount of difference in different cultures, but there's that commonality of humanity. And I think also we can easily fall into the trap of thinking about a singular culture within one country. But the reality is, whether you're in London or Glasgow or Hyderabad or Delhi or whichever part of the world, like New York or San Francisco, there are very different subcultures within countries. And therefore, you really have to think big. Like, okay, these are some of the bigger brushstrokes about the cultures that person has experienced in their life. But also you've got to think really small about, well, who is that individual human? What is their personal preference? What are the cities they've lived in? What are their family cultures? What are their religious beliefs? And so the nuance of our individual state based on our lived experiences is profound. And therefore, it is really important to remember the commonality and the differences. Adi, can I pick you up on something you've just said? Because I'm really interested in you mentioning it about the imposter syndrome piece, because that's something that a lot of people struggle with. And I think is particularly challenging when you arrive in an amazing organization and you've had a successful background, but suddenly you find yourself surrounded by a lot of other really brilliant people. Is that something you ever struggled with, or did you have a kind of coping mechanism with it?
Early on in my career, I did, right? In my schooling, I definitely felt it. And when I went to do a master's program in Mumbai, that particular college, the Tata Institute of Social Sciences, they select 30 kids a year out of, I think, multiple thousands of applications. And I got in there, but everybody around me were, top of the class from multiple parts of India. And I definitely felt that. But so there's no but. I definitely has happened to me. When I first went to Google, I felt the same way. I'd heard all these things about the crazy Google interview process. I was interviewed by 17 people before I got into Google.
Wow.
And I thought, oh my God, I'm sure the recruiter got this wrong and then interviewing me to be a CEO for Google. I really got confused. I'm like, why are so many people interviewing me? And this was 2004, 2005, and that was the Google process. But now when I reflect on it, I think the feeling of being surrounded by really smart people who are very good at what they do is absolutely true. It's not a myth. However, if you approach with the right intent and you seek the right, if you operate with the right openness and intent, over a period of time, you will realize that they are good, but you're also there because of a reason. And the ecosystem has figured out that reason and hence given you that opportunity. And you might find, there's some people who might do it earlier, some people might do it later. But if you connect with the right people and recognize that you're okay, I'm okay, rather than you're okay, I'm not okay, it might help. But it is a real thing. It is scary to be surrounded by really, really smart people. And you have to find out from yourself, within yourself, what is that one thing that got you here? And then focus on that.
Yeah. So it's almost like you've got to build that self-belief as well over time.
Absolutely.
What kind of challenges, as you've gone through those different roles that you've mentioned in different organizations, what are some of the turning points or milestones that have really been pivotal for you in your journey?
A couple of things come to mind. I was working at Dell Computers, which was one of the, at that time, a really big, I'm definitely aging myself. In 2004, it was the biggest computer company in the world, and my first HR job was there. And the person who hired me to Dell left Dell on the day I joined. So I'm like, oh God, I've just taken this job, and this person who's hired me left. Anyway, long story short, he joined Google, and he called me a year later to come and join Google. And this was just at the time when Google was planning to go public. And my mom thought I was crazy. She's like, you're gonna leave this big computer company and go work for a .com? Like, what's wrong with you? Anyway, I joined Google, which I think was a big pivotal moment in my career. I joined it at the right time. I was at Google when the entire company could go on a ski trip to Lake Tahoe. And now I don't even know how many 100,000 people there are, like hundreds of thousands of people. But I was there when the entire sales team, entire global sales team could sit in one big conference center in San Francisco, right? And then 3 years into my stint into Google India, and a couple of months after I got married, I got a call from the person who ran global online sales for Google, asking me if I would come and run the global HR team for the business I was working for in Google India. Nick, you won't believe me, I actually thought he called the wrong person.
Really?
I really thought he called the wrong person because I lived and worked in India all my life. I'd seen only one part of Google, which is India. And here I was being asked to come and run HR for a global team, spreading across 40 countries, with team members spread across multiple cities in the US, some in Europe. It was a big step up. And now when I reflect back on my career, we are all a sum total of our life experiences. A lot of really amazing people took bets on me, even when I did not believe I was ready for that role.
Mm-hmm.
And I have tried my best in my career to pass that on. The move to the US, and then I was asked to go run Asia Pac Google HR when Asia was becoming the fastest growing region. And I remember I was supposed to move to Singapore, and I remember having dinner with my ex-boss at that time. And dinner conversations, she asked me, hey, so what made you think about going to Singapore? Not the job part, but the city part, the profession, the personal part. I said, I've never been. She's like, what? You're moving to a country with like a 2-year-old and you've never been? I said, no. Well, like, what can go wrong? I mean, it's Google. I'll do well. And if not, we'll figure out something. So then I moved back to the US to run HR for a company called Square, which at that time was still a pre-IPO, a private company. And then coming to Uber, again, somebody took a bet on me to come and run Total Rewards for, at that time, what was going to be one of the biggest IPOs for IPOs in the tech sector. And I'd never really done Total Rewards. I knew what it was. It was adjacent to a lot of things that I did. But somebody took a bet on me, and it was one of the best things I did. So moving to Google, moving to the US, the Singapore move, moving to Uber, these are all. And now in Amsterdam and enjoying the rain here.
If you could look back on that early period and think, I wish I knew then what I know today, would there be one or two key takeaways?
There are parts of your career when you do things because of FOMO, the fear of missing out. I think I became CHRO for a company way before I was ready for it.
Really? Okay.
And I didn't do well, right? And I don't know how many people are going to see this interview, but I don't have any problem saying it. I wasn't ready for it. Not that I will never be ready for it. I did it once more afterwards, and I'll definitely do it again. But at that time, I just didn't know what I didn't know. And my learning from there is I might have screwed up long-term or messed up long-term to gain short-term. All my peers were becoming CHRO, so I thought I should become. But I didn't stop myself and ask, hey, what aspects of being a CHRO had I not done before? So should I probably take a rotation in another part of HR and gain those skills before I actually lead the entire function? And that it's a really good learning. nothing teaches you better than failure, and if you're willing to learn from it. I think there are parts of your time, there are times in your career when you might do things more because of your environment and external factors than what truly you want to do or what's right for you. My sincere, humble request to everybody is to just think, is this what's great for Nick might not be great for me? And having that introspection and self-belief to stay back, to say, it's okay, not now.
Yeah, it's such a balancing act, isn't it? Because it's I think a necessary part of growth that you find yourself in situations where you feel out of your depth, because that's how you grow and learn. And then I loved what you reflected on with the belief of the leaders and those around you as being instrumental in your own journey. So you can you've got to put yourself in slightly uncomfortable places, and you've got people around you telling you to go. It takes a lot of wisdom and maturity to be able to say, do you know what, I'm not quite there yet, but I will be. So it's a really hard one to get right.
Yeah, and nothing teaches you better than actually experiences. What was that? This might be one of the most cliched things, but what is it? Good judgment comes from experience, and experience from bad judgment.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. How have you managed, especially following on from that kind of observation, how have you managed your own mental health and well-being along the way?
There have been parts of my professional career where I actually haven't.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And when I reflect on it, when I look back on it, I know exactly like what I was doing wrong, right? Of all the things I can pick to say right now, the one thing I would say is I wasn't sleeping well. I wasn't giving myself the time to sleep well, right? I was getting ahead, going along with the bare minimum. So if I had to do a business travel from Singapore to Tokyo, I would do 2 red eyes on a Monday and on a Thursday.
Right.
And you do that over and over because I'm thinking, I can get in on Tuesday, I do Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and I fly back on Thursday night. Mm-hmm. Whereas I could have taken Monday morning flight, flown back on Friday morning. I think there was a lot of things that, you genuinely, and I know you asked me about like how did I manage mental, but I'm saying it all adds up. You just take your mental and physical strength for granted. And then you suddenly reach a point when you're like so tired and so exhausted because you didn't pause to take time to reflect on it. And it did impact, my health, and I had a wake-up call a few years back. And since then, I have been very, very thoughtful. My work output hasn't come down. The quality of work hasn't come down. The quantum of roles that I've handled has actually gone up. But I've been very thoughtful about, managing my when I get in. I'm sure you've heard about the what is this? I think there are these integrators and then there are these separators. The integrators are people who mix everything in their life together, work and life, and personal life, everything is together, right? And there are some people who have to clearly separate. If you ask a separator to become an integrator, they'll really struggle. And if you do the vice versa, they'll also say, I'm an integrator. I'm always on, I'm never on. But I've been very thoughtful about, doing what I need to, taking the time to go to the gym, going for a run if required, switching off once in a while to like read a book, not having a screen with me. All these things are that I'm sure you can read up about, but it's so difficult to actually implement without self-discipline.
Yeah, and ironically, I sometimes think they're the hardest things to implement when you are feeling most under pressure, which is frustrating because they're the times you most need those behaviors. With the travel piece, I think that's a really interesting one as well, because the way you described it, and I can relate to that as someone that travels quite a lot for work, coming back on the red eye and then having to suddenly miraculously recover by the time you go back into family life at the weekend with young children perhaps, and it's actually really hard to balance the home life and work life when you have jet lag.
It is so, now when I think about it, I'm like, oh my God, I didn't even know what I was doing. A very wise person once told me, the age of whatever, like pick your age, like whatever, 30 to 50 or 35 to 55 or 35 to pick any, but approximately around that, are the toughest or the busiest periods of your life. If you have kids, then your kids demand the most of you at that time. If you have parents and they're getting older, your parents demand the most of you, and your profession demands the most of you. That's the age when everything in your life is asking 110% of you. And then suddenly, the kids go away, you're in a much more senior, like all these things happen, and you're like, I could have like spread this out, but you can't. That's life.
Yeah, it does all come together. I totally agree. I'd love to now think about your role. Can you tell us about the scope of your role at Uber, and what your day-to-day looks like?
I've been here at Uber a little over 6 years now. So I started at Uber in the summer of 2017, and at that time Uber was still a private company. And I came to Uber to run a team called Total Rewards, which includes compensation, global benefits, and our equity or the stock admin team. I did that for the first 2 years of my stint in Uber, which is managing the Total Rewards team. And we did a fantastic IPO in the summer of 2019, and we've been a public company since then. And all the things that all the governance and all the compensation committee and the board stuff that goes along with it, all of that is a part of my team's mandate. And then in 2020. One of my peers who was leading the HR business partner team, he left, and I started managing that team too. And over the last couple of years, we have had a few changes in the org structure. But right now, I manage, in addition to the Total Rewards team, and for people who are aware of how HR teams are structured, there are the HR business partner teams, there's recruiting, and then there are a bunch of what we call as the centers of excellence or the expertise teams. So I manage most of these centers of excellence teams at Uber, our people analytics, people technology, the people partners, all our people operations team, the talent development team, the people M&A team, compensation benefits and equity, of course. So it's a fantastic portfolio. And again, I'm so blessed and thankful that I'm managing all these teams, which in another company, in another life, I might not have been able to. But there's the Uber context and the ability to get all these things together to do things in a scaled way that made us create this context and this structure at Uber. So that in a nutshell is what I do.
So one of the challenges, I think, is when, particularly around mental health and well-being and the broader well-being of people, is when teams within an organization are too fragmented, with too many decision trees required to make certain decisions. And that can actually become very challenging, because the reality is there's huge overlap with the things you've just mentioned in relation to human performance. And having them all under one roof in the way you've described is very valuable in terms of being able to make connected decisions. But at the same time, I imagine it's a overwhelming number of responsibilities as well. So how do you manage so many different teams? Is it through the leaders you have? Is it through your do you see them as just very interconnected and therefore it makes it easier to link them together? I'd love to learn more about that.
I try. I'm not perfect at it. I try my best. There are times when things slip, but there are some patterns that I follow. There are some habits that I follow. Have an ability to learn, to know the headlines of what's happening in every team as regularly as you can, but then be ready to go very deep if you feel that something is not, really appearing to go at the pace or in the way it's supposed to. Now, it's not science. There's a bit of science and a bit of art to this, but the most important thing is to believe in your team. And I know this sounds like the easiest thing said, but there are people you get your team together, you tell them what's the bigger goal here, and then you trust them to do it, right? Otherwise, then you'd have to do everything, and that's humanly impossible for anybody, right? I think around 10, 15 years back is when it really hit me that, oh my God, as you keep going higher or more senior in your professional career, you are more and more powerless and helpless because your teams have to really be they have to really deliver, and you should be able to see the patterns and bring them together. So helping them prioritize, getting obstacles out of the way, and allowing the team to be able to say no to something that wasn't in their priority. Those are my big roles, right? And I'm getting them the resources that they need.
Yeah. So really facilitating, it's a kind of real that servant leadership model, really, of allowing the people to do their best work.
Yes, however, being ready to roll up your sleeves and go deep, right? It's very common for me to have meetings 3-4 times a week with the more junior in their career analysts on my team. I don't like expect everything to be ready and presented to me, right? I just jump in. So knowing when to go deep in and fold your sleeves, roll up your sleeves and solve the problem, and when to step back and helping prioritize.
Mm-hmm.
I try. I don't know whether I do it well, but I try my best.
Well, I think but there's the beauty in the way you describe it, actually, because I think we can only try our best with these things, and that humanity of not always getting it right is really important, both to model to other people that it's okay not to get everything right all of the time, and also it just keeps the humanity in work as well. The Uber story is one which is so inspirational. The speed with which it grew and transformed and became such a household name globally in a really short space of time. You traveled so many of those transitions and evolutions. And when you look back on that, how do you feel about it? How do you describe that experience?
It's been a very hardworking 6 years here. But when I look back at these 6 years and the evolution of Uber, first up, if I just look at it from the perspective of what we are doing out there, all these millions of earners who are getting an ability to earn on their terms, switch on and switch off whenever they need to, that just brings a lot of joy to me as a human being, right? It's this entirely new model of work, which just makes me feel very, very glad that I was a part of that evolution. And the leadership team that we have had, and it's been in place now for close to 6 years, 5 to 6 years. Most, if not all, of the leadership team has been with Uber for the last 5, 6 years. And that team has been outstanding in all aspects of their specific functional areas. So with a clear a clear purpose of what we want to do, who we want to be in society, and with a very strong leadership team, it's actually been a very, very joyous, fun, hardworking experience over the last 6 years.
Yeah, I can well imagine. And how do you, obviously over those past 6 years, we have been through the most extraordinary social changes, and society has faced some of the biggest challenges it's faced in living memory. How do you personally, as a leader, think about developing a sustainable high performance for your people, and simultaneously thinking about their well-being?
Again, if I knew the perfect answer for this, Nick, I would be like the greatest person in the world. I think it's a struggle that all of us go through, and we all try our best. I can only tell you, what I've been able to do or try as much as I could, and I can tell you that it's yielded, good enough dividends. Most, if not all, of my leadership team in Uber has been on this team for the last 5, 6 years through all of this craziness, right? And I always sit back and reflect on why, right? And it goes back to what I said at the beginning. At the core, people, humanity, human beings react to the same things, which is a sense of purpose, meaningful work, people that they can connect with and relate to, people that they can learn from. And we have got a lot of theory, the psychological safety. There's all these things that we hear about, but you boil it down to these things, and maybe a few more things are good compensation, being able to be proud of the work that you do individually and as a collective, and this is never a one and done thing. Every day, every week, every month, I keep asking myself, what's this person's next in life? Like, what could we be doing about that? And working with a person to manage and drive their own growth. You cannot do this. What might be important and the next step for one person might not be the same for another person. Right? And we've all gone through this, right? The old theory of management used to be treat people like how you like to be treated. And the new theories treat them how they like to be treated.
Yeah. And know them. So in
And
order to know that, you have to get to know them.
Totally. Not think of them as one collective. I'm unique. Every person is unique and unrepeatable. And you want to ensure that you connect with them, each person as a human being, for whom work is a very important small part of life. There's so many other things to life, and connect. There are some people who are more open, talking about their personal context and personal situations. Some who are not. Some who are somewhere in the middle. So figuring out what a person's internal compass is, where they want to go, and then working with them so that they can charter their own path, and working your best to see if you can make it happen. And there are times when you might say, you know what you're expecting might not happen here, and you might have to go somewhere else. I've gone to weddings of people who we've separated mutually from companies. We've continued to be great friends afterwards, and there are people who have come back and told me actually that was the best thing that happened. I went and did something else, which was my calling in life.
Some of the themes you've touched on, I think, are really helpful for people to kind of hear and think about. You've talked a lot about the humility of leadership and recognizing when you fail or when you're not succeeding, and being honest about that. You've talked about essentially servant leadership, so getting things out of the way of people, helping facilitate them to do their best work and trusting in them. You've talked about role modeling, well-being behaviors in your own life. And then you've also talked about the importance of knowing your people and really knowing them and having honest and open conversations about their professional and personal aspirations, and then being honest about whether that opportunity sits inside the organization or not. And I think those are such important things to be highlighting. And I think leadership has transformed. And in relation to mental health and well-being, leadership has been highlighted as pivotal, actually, to helping solve the mental health crisis and helping to get the best out of our people. I'm just wondering where you turn for leadership guidance. Like what do you've mentioned earlier, or you're always learning. Who are you learning from, and where do you turn for inspiration?
And just one point on the previous piece about leadership and well-being. I think it is such a pivotal role of a leader today to ensure that you create the right environment for people to feel, to be, to have well-being, and to feel that they can actually get their professional pursuits and also have a very good balance in their life. So the leaders have roles of doing, they have roles of enabling, and both are important. And there are also roles of designing. So there are times when, as a leader, you have to design the right policies. There are times when you have to just enable, you design, sometimes you have to just enable people to explore what is right for them. You don't need to do it. And there are sometimes when you actually have to do things to ensure that clarifying expectations, giving regular feedback, all of those things are stuff that you have to do to ensure, and all of these add up to a person's well-being. You have to foster a positive environment. You have to clarify expectations. You have to invest in their training. You have to promote wellness programs. You have to design them first. You have to continuously assess what's happening in the culture of the organization. So, I know I'm giving a long drawn answer, but every day this checklist has to keep going on in your head.
Yeah, and just to build on that as well, before I hand back to you for the answer to the question, was I like that growing recognition around what's going on around people as being informative on what's going on inside someone. Because I think for a long time when it came to well-being, it was actually often seen as something that's just happening in your head or just happening in your body. But the reality is the social determinants of your health are very significant. And what happens to you in the workplace and what happens to you from the people around you will be so instrumental in your own health and well-being and in your ability to flourish.
Totally. I mean, very well said, Nick.
So I'd love to. So where do you turn for guidance on leadership?
Multiple sources. First is there's the piece that I go to for strength and comfort, which is my family always. My wife is a very accomplished professional. I can sometimes, sound things out with her. My parents are good sounding boards for me. They're not anywhere close to what I do professionally, but I also, a lot of reading and observing people at work, not just the leaders, but a lot of people are at various stages of their careers. I've looked at, somebody who's like 3 years out of college on my team who just gave it to me one day in a meeting. And because very directly gave me some honest feedback and thought what I was doing was wrong. And it just warmed my heart. Leadership is, it can come in multiple shapes and forms. I was reading, what's the name? Good Power, the book Good Power. I don't know if you've read this book. Ginny Rometty, the ex-CEO of IBM. It just was wonderful. The things she touched on, her early life, and then how she managed through all the growth at IBM. It was just a wonderful read. So books. I see if I can on here on podcasts a lot of interviews of leaders across the world, and they need not necessarily all be of the same exact political motivation that I have. You can pick and choose what things make sense to you, and you leave things that don't make sense to you. So my family, my wife, a lot of reading, my team members. And I've also watched Dara, our Uber CEO, the last 6 years. It's just a privilege and a delight to be working on the same team. The sense of purpose, the calmness in crisis, the ability to deal with ambiguity. It's all like I look at him and I'm like, wow, that's fun. And I've not been working with him for 6 years, and there's still days when it surprises me by how calmly he handles things.
I love that, and I think the to have a leader in the organization that's so inspiring is, I imagine, very empowering. And then I agree, family, friends, and books. And I haven't actually read that book, so I'll definitely look it up after this. So thank you for the recommendation. As we look forward to the future of work, it's quite a transformational period we're in right now with technology. How do you see the emergence of AI, AR, VR, all of these new things coming through? How do you see them impacting on people function in businesses, and particularly around well-being? Is that something you're thinking about, or is it something that people are excited about, a little bit nervous about?
In my opinion, and again, these are early days, everyone's trying to figure out what this thing is. But I think put a pin in that and first step back and look at the generational change that's happening in the workplace, right? Over the next 5-10 years, and even in the last 5. So if you look at the last 5 years and the next 5-10 years, there's an entire generational change that's going to be happening, right? And that generational change is going to impact all aspects of work and of the workforce, including people who have been in the workforce longer than who are joining it right now. Digital fluency is a thing. You can't get away with not being digitally fluent. The flexibility and work-life integration is a thing now. It's not one of the side items, right? Purpose-driven work. Ask anybody in a college interview, graduates from college, they want purpose-driven work, not, you know, log in, work 40 years and log out. I'm not saying work's not purpose-driven work, but that was a different, you know, that was a different thesis of work. And we're getting to very different, people will move if they don't find purpose in their work. A true understanding and recognition of diversity and inclusion. This generation has grown up in a diverse society. They take it for granted, they expect it, they expect the workplace to be similar to the societies they live in. And a deep mental health awareness. These are 4 or 5, or I don't know how many I mentioned, but these are big things that are all coming together at the same time that are going to fundament, whether it's AI or no AI, the workforce is going there. And that's going to really impact the future of work, the way companies are run, the way leadership manifests itself, the way people think about making careers. All these things are going to, in my opinion, go through a seismic shift over the next 5-10 years. And it's happening as we are seeing it. In light of that, of course, it's early days for AI, and there's a lot of debate on the goods and the bads and how safe is it? Are we doing it? Are we developing it in a good way? The governance, all of that being said, at its core, I think human beings have done what they always do: design something that makes what they're doing right now do better, so they can find something else to do, which makes everybody's life even more better. Now, there's going to be two ends of this argument always, and I don't want to pick any side, but sometimes technology is going to happen, irrespective of which side of the argument you are in. I just hope that, we continue to develop it in a very responsible way and use it to ensure that, I know some of my professional friends who have used parts of AI to change how they work day to day. And they're saying it's phenomenal. It just changes the pace and the speed at which they work, the efficiency, focusing on tasks that they really need to, and letting AI take care of the tasks that they don't need to. So it's at its core, I think it's very useful. It's going to make people productive, efficient, and get us to searching for the next thing that we want to do. But we need to do it in a manner that takes everybody together. And I don't know, I'm not yet sure whether we as a collective have figured that out. And I think the next 0 to 10 years is going to, next 0 to 5 to 10 years is going to be about that.
Yeah, that's a lovely thing you've done there, which is combining the arrival of this new generation into the workforce and their different expectations with the arrival of these new tools, which is, like as you say, they are the next evolution of human tools that have been developed. And to think how those two things will combine is going to be fascinating. And I do think that the expectation of future workers is profoundly different to where we're at today, and it will change the workplace. I sometimes find myself in conversations where I get the impression what's being suggested is that new generation will eventually just become like us. And I always think it's not likely going to be that way around. I think it's that they're going to come in and change the world and we'll feel like dinosaurs.
Yeah.
And then how do we adjust? And to your point earlier about, you learn from someone who is 3 years out of school or college, how can we learn from them? How can we learn from that generation's ability to talk about mental health, which I think is inspirational for a generation that's been handed down a very stigmatized topic. The fact that the generation coming through has destigmatized it so well is amazing, actually, and very inspirational.
I've got 3 kids between 10 and 20 years, and I see that, right? They're very, very comfortable being aware, asking, hey, I'm struggling with this. Maybe I should, do I need therapy for this? And it's so destigmatized. It's very encouraging that people can talk about it and deal with it in a manner that's appropriate for them.
Yeah, I totally agree. Adi, as we look forward, as you look forward in your life, what do you want to be achieving? What are your personal goals moving forward over the next couple of years?
I started on a health journey a few years back. I did very well for a couple of years, and I think I've fallen back a bit now. So my first priority is to get back more rigorously onto my health journey. I didn't know if you're asking me professionally, but that's like top of mind for me. Um, Work-wise, I made a big, professional and personal move. I moved countries from US to Amsterdam, and working here and understanding and taking these learnings and understandings for the betterment of the entire people team at Uber and the entire company. That's something that I'm looking forward to. But Uber might feel like a company that's big and been there. We haven't even scraped the surface. There's back when I was at Google, I remember the CEO used to say, "Oh, Google is going to be like brushing your teeth. You do it at least twice a day, if not more." I think Uber is there now, right? I think it's like brushing your teeth. You'll probably use Uber twice a day, if not more. And we are at that culmination of the tech world, not the culmination, the intersection of the tech world and the physical world. You take out your phone and you order something, order food, a physical person goes, brings a physical food to your physical address, and then you eat that physical food. But the way you got it is all through technology. Likewise, moving. So there is just so much that Uber is on the cusp of accomplishing. We have done all the hard work, we've built all the technology and the network and the platform. And I'm really looking forward to what else Uber accomplishes. And me and the rest of the people team and my team help, and how we enable that growth and that trajectory and that the place that we have in societies and communities today. And I'm so thankful and happy to be part of that journey.
Very exciting, that intersection of humanity, technology is wonderful to think about what will be on the horizon there. And tell me about your hopes for mental health in the workplace in the coming years. It's been in the years you've been working, even the years since we've known each other, the topic has changed so much. How do you anticipate that, or how do you hope that will keep changing over the years to come?
In some way, I have a narrower view of the workplace because I've been in technology, consumer technology, Silicon Valley technology companies. I know there's an entire world out there. There's manufacturing and pharmaceuticals and airline, all these things, service industry. So I'm not necessarily an expert on all of those. I don't know what I don't know, so I shouldn't be talking about it. But in the technology, the broad technology domain, the awareness. If you ask me what's been the biggest success of the mental health, not profession, but practitioners, the entire culture, is to work towards making it no longer a taboo. Mm-hmm. I hear it every day at work about somebody either, getting stressed out about something and acknowledging it, talking about taking a break, talking about going for therapy, talking about making a bunch of changes to enable their better output and productivity. So I think the stigma and the taboo, that going away is been the biggest. I'm not saying it's gone away completely. There's still so much more, but the biggest strides have been in the ability to talk about it openly. Mm-hmm. And I think once that happens, then you can chip away at all the other things that have been stumbling blocks or disenablers, if there's a word like that. And I think we are there. The point I mentioned about the new emerging workforce of being mental health aware and flexible and purpose driven, it's going to come together. It's not going to be, flexibility used to be one corner of the puzzle, and well-being is something, and you talk about it once a month on a well-being day. I think those days are gone. It's going to be integrated into everything that we do at work.
Yeah, I totally agree. I love this idea that mental health is embedded into the flow of work. So that in every aspect of our working life, work is designed to help us be our best selves. We can engage in self-development and growth and our well-being seamlessly, and ultimately that it becomes a strategic priority in every business around the world. Because after all, if our people are up, our business is up. If our people are down, our business is down. And really embracing that and making it at the heart of a business is incredibly exciting, actually. Adi, thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. If you've enjoyed this podcast, you can listen to our other episodes and subscribe to future shows wherever you get your podcasts. Next month, we're going to be back and joined by a very special guest, the CHRO of Standard Chartered Bank, Tanuj Kapilashwarami. I'm very much looking forward to that conversation. But Adi, in the meantime, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks a lot for having me, Nick. It was an absolute pleasure.